happen. We have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
I'm Andy Hum, and welcome back, Ann Northrup.
I woke up with a bad cold.
No
Andy.
time for chit-chat, too much news.
But thank you for soldiering through with the guests in a last-minute fix.
Thank you.
Thank you to the guests. All right.
But no thank you to the Trump administration, which is leaving the safety of transgender students to the states and threatening our health care nationwide amidst widespread grassroots protests.
And, of course, anti-LGBT legislation continues to explode at the state level, so you can imagine where the trans guidelines are going.
But the High Court in Washington state has told a religious florist that anti-LGBT discrimination is not okay.
Is this the end for little Milo? That's quoting Edward G. Robinson. Andy thinks it is, but he's been done in. We'll discuss that.
And Tanzania is trying to do in its gay people.
HIV infections are taking a dramatic drop in the United States. But sexually transmitted infections are rising, and HIV is still rising among Latinos and young men who have sex with men.
I'm going to review a bunch of plays, but you're going to have to go online to read the full reviews.
Oh, we're okay. ABC TV's When We Rise miniseries on the LGBT movement in San Francisco starts Monday night. We have a review from one of the participants.
And our guest this week, because it's Oscar week, is Rob Shooter of NaughtyGossip.com. And he's going to talk about that and the war between so many people in show business and Donald Trump.
But here we go. For all those who were hoping that Donald Trump was telling the truth when he said he was going to protect LGBTQ people, he's not.
He never really said that. The only thing he campaigned on was you shouldn't be thrown off buildings by ISIS. Seriously.
Yeah, but then there was the whole thing a few weeks ago about how Ivanka and Jared Kushner had stopped the administration from getting rid of the Obama rule that federal contractors had to not discriminate against LGBT people.
While preparing a religious freedom order.
Yes, that'll be coming down the road. But what we have now, what we have expected all along, is that Jeff Sessions is in charge with Steve Bannon in the administration. Our new Attorney General is flipping the script, as they say, on the Obama administration's guidelines for how to treat transgender students in the schools.
And all civil rights, basically. Now remember, these transgender guidelines, the school districts were seeking this. They needed some help on how to deal with this issue. It was not a law.
About should trans kids have the right to use the bathroom that accords with their lived gender identity.
And of course, we're going to find out what the law actually is when the Gavin Grimm case is decided by the United States Supreme Court. So
the transgender guidelines were issued by the Obama administration. They were not the force of law. It wasn't you have to do this, but these were guidelines, and they did carry some potential penalties if someone violated them and someone brought suit. So the right wing brought suit preemptively in a targeted court in Texas and got the court to decide to put all those guidelines on hold. The Obama administration argued in court against that ruling and said no, the guidelines should be allowed to be used. Jeff Sessions came in as Attorney General and immediately told that court that the administration, the U.S. government, would no longer take that position, would reverse its position on the guidelines.
And by the time you see this, we'll maybe know what they're going to do on the Gavin Grimm case, which is being heard before the Supreme Court in March. Clearly, they're not going to defend Gavin Grimm. Question is, are they going to come in on the other side?
Well, and the question is, in a still 8-person court, are we going to have a 4-4 decision?
Which case we win.
Well, that would apply only to Gavin Grimm. It would not apply nationally. But if Anthony Kennedy proves to be trans-friendly, then we could get a 5-3 decision,
Wow.
which would be a national decision that mandated inclusion of trans people under Title IX and add them to the non-discrimination rules from the federal government.
This is a big, big deal, getting defined under Title IX. We would like all LGBT people to be defined under Title IX. And
the rules against sex discrimination.
Right. To make,
so that could overcome what the administration is doing today, Wednesday, as we tape, in rescinding the Department of Education guidelines. Now, the other little wrinkle to this is that the Washington Post and the New York Times are reporting that there was actually a fight in the administration over this between, hold your horses, are you sitting down? Betsy DeVos, Education Secretary, champion of conversion therapy, who the Times describes as a longtime supporter of the LGBT community.
God. The Times has been so wrong on these stories.
Horrible.
Get somebody over there who knows what they're doing.
Written by Jeremy Peters, out gay reporter. But the story is that Betsy DeVos wanted to keep the guidelines. She was worried about suicide by trans kids.
Yeah.
She's been reading the little reports, I guess. But Jeff Sessions, no, we are getting rid of these guidelines. And Trump sided with Sessions. What else did you expect?
Yes, he said, you got to get this woman under control.
Well, talk about the Department of Education being marginalized. I guess the fact that her brother is Richard Prince of Blackwater didn't make any difference. But the early word, and as I say, we're taping Wednesday afternoon, we haven't seen the final statement, was that she was holding fast for a non-bullying statement within this rescission of the guidelines.
Which we all know by now, because it'll have come out.
But it's what it is just telling us what we expected all along, that Jeff Sessions was going to take the Justice Department back to the, what do you want, 18th century farther. Well, he will destroy civil rights wherever he can, voting rights, everything else, and we are just the canary in the coal mine.
Well, my favorite clip of the week was on Meet the Press in the opening. They had a middle-aged man at a town hall meeting saying to his representative very calmly, I feel like I'm a passenger in the back seat of a car being driven by a drunk driver. That's what this feels like under Trump.
Also, you know, Caitlyn Jenner was at the inauguration still claiming that she was going to convince the Republicans to wise up on this stuff. A lot of good that did.
Well, I mean, you know, of course, this is the week we had the crazy press conference from President Trump where he lied about the Electoral College. I'm starting to wonder if he's lying about his penis size as well after hearing all that.
Wondering? I think Marco Rubio told us about that.
I'm wondering.
And Sean Spicer had the nerve to stand up at the White House press briefing and say that they're rescinding these guidelines because the president believes in states' rights. Really? Really? Do you remember the 1950s and before, where that was the excuse for segregation?
Plus, they are, when it suits them, they are going to try to override state human rights laws and everything, and grant people religious freedom to discriminate against anybody.
They also claim that the trans guidelines were too confusing. You know, there's dispute about this. So the federal government should not stand up for any values?
States' rights? You're going to back off on denying federal funds to sanctuary cities?
Oh, yeah, exactly.
All right.
And I guess since it's Oscar week, we should mention that Meryl Streep did show up at the Human Rights Campaign dinner in New York a couple of weeks ago.
We expected her to show up.
We did. She was scheduled and gave a speech twice as urgent against Trump as she did at the Golden Globes.
We'll talk more about that with our guest, Rob Shooter, later.
But thank you, Meryl.
Yes. So. And, you know, obviously there's a lot of protest about what's going on with the transgender community, so it's much in the news. But and the reason I put this in the headline is I do worry. I mean, these are very important issues. The Russia scandal is an extremely important issue, but these are all the things that we're talking about while they are dismantling Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security, folks. These are the big, items that they want. And the more we talk about these other things, and we should, they are getting away with murder, dismantling the safety net in the United States of America, which is why there are so many protesters out there, thank goodness, at these town hall meetings. People get it.
Shall we show the protesters here on Not Our President's Day,
Sure.
which is
Gays Against Guns.
And Rise and Resist.
They have pictures of presidents upside down, and they held a funeral for the presidency. I mean, these are end times.
Upside down is the international distress signal. And yeah,
well, you can put Woodrow Wilson upside down as far as I'm concerned. He was a big racist.
A lot of them. Well, there was some discussion, I think on The View this week, of, well, who was your favorite president? And I thought to myself, do I have a favorite president?
You know, look, I would say FDR, and yet he did the Japanese internment.
Exactly.
You know, you know, they're
Nobody's
people.
perfect.
To quote Joey Brown.
Yikes.
All right.
But at the same time, the Trump administration, in some confusing little move, has retained Randy Barry at the State Department as a special envoy for LGBT human rights.
And Obama gave him another title before he left, so he's even more entrenched in the...
Deputy Secretary of State or something.
Here somewhere, yeah.
Well, there are only 6 people working at the State Department these days. So.
Trump hasn't filled thousands of key positions because they all have to be vetted by President Bannon.
Well, Randy Barry's still there, so is he going to start trotting the world again, standing up for LGBT people around the world in the name of the United States?
Actually, it would be nice if he traveled to the United States and started standing up for LGBT rights here.
Don't hold your breath.
I hope maybe some other envoys from other countries will start coming here and say, you know, and how about sanctions against the United States for anti-gay bigotry?
And you know, lest you think we are walled off, we have all the deportation news and the travel ban and everything else. And one of the stories that came out around that was that in El Paso, a trans woman was arrested. She was an undocumented immigrant. She'd gone to the courthouse to get a protective order against her abusive partner. The partner turned her into the feds, and she was deported.
Well, this roundup of immigrants and this crackdown, and to quote Donald Trump, this is Nazi stuff. You know, hiring all these people and, you know, letting loose all these people, grabbing people out of their homes. I mean, come on.
Come on.
It's just insane. Now, you know, we talk about how, you know, some nominees get sidelined, but they never get sidelined for policy. Just like Milo, he didn't get sidelined for policy, got something else. But the new nominee for Labor Secretary, Alexander Acosta, he could face a grilling when he goes before the Senate because he was a top prosecutor in Miami, and he cut a sweetheart deal for Jeffrey Epstein, this guy who had all this sex with underage girls.
Supposedly.
Well.
Allegedly.
All right.
No, I don't think we've ever gotten to the bottom of that story.
Well, he served time for it. He served 18 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he served 18. Jeffrey Epstein did. Not everybody. There were so many celebrities involved in going down to the house and having sex. We don't have to repeat their names. No. They're very famous. Just Google it. And then we have the you know, the contest this weekend in the Democratic Party about who's going to lead the party.
Yep.
And it's no longer going to be who's the woman who's there now?
Wasserman Schultz.
No, successor.
Oh, Donna Brazile. No, she didn't have a plea. She gave questions to Hillary. She wasn't sticking around.
Exactly, as Trump has reminded us. So the angle this week is that the out-gay New Hampshire Democratic Party chair, who was running for the position, Ray Buckley, has quit, and he has endorsed Representative Keith Ellison from Minnesota.
Well, then we also have the out-gay mayor of Indianapolis, who is Pete Buttigieg.
Not Indianapolis, South Bend?
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
He's running, and he's sort of a compromise candidate, so I wouldn't rule him out entirely.
Okay, we'll see.
And he's a good guy.
Yep.
All right, shall we race through some state legislation?
Please.
All right. The Virginia legislature has passed its draconian religious freedom laws, sending it to Governor McAuliffe, who has promised to veto it.
Thank you, Governor.
In Texas, SB 6 and other heinous Anti-LGBT laws are advancing. SB 6 is the Texas equivalent of North Carolina's HB 2 anti-trans law. But the NFL and the NBA have said to Texas explicitly, if you pass this, no more Super Bowls, no more big NBA championship games, forget it.
And the comptroller of the city of New York, Scott Stringer, organized people with corporations with $11 billion in assets to say, don't do this. I hope that means that they're not going to do business in Texas, to send that strong message.
Yeah.
I mean, Texas is being focused on the way North Carolina was.
Florida, Jacksonville City Council adopted a sexual orientation and gender identity non-discrimination law, as did Toledo, did Genda. I guess they already have Sonda. And they also in Toledo passed 12-0, a law that forbids conversion therapy of minors by medical personnel.
Now, lots of bills introduced around the country, and you can go to aclu.org and find a current list of what's going on in your state, and you should be fighting these things. Some of them are just introduced by right-wingers and they're not going anywhere. But in South Dakota, the discriminatory bill there is advanced in Committee 5-2, and it would let child care agencies discriminate. It eliminates what the state may do in response.
And the Arkansas Supreme Court rejected putting both same-sex parents on birth certificates. the National Center for Lesbian Rights and others are appealing that to the Supreme Court.
And Oklahoma has one of these bills that is advancing and has passed its first committee vote, which would mean that couples who want to get married may be denied anything from getting a marriage license to renting a hotel room, creating invitations, buying a wedding cake, more, all these kinds of things. It just carves out a lot of, you can get married, but you're not going to have any rights.
Governor Roy Cooper in North Carolina, our friend, has proposed a repeal of HB 2, but the LGBT community is not crazy about it because it inserts a lot of draconian criminal penalties against any misbehavior in the bathrooms, right. And they're afraid the right wing will use that to make false claims. And it also puts some restrictions on passing local non-discrimination laws with a 30-day notice to the legislature. But there is another repeal bill that's been offered that's better, and that includes a proposal for a statewide non-discrimination bill. Good luck with that.
In Montana, legislature has once again killed LGBT rights legislation that would protect us. They've been fighting for that for a long time.
Good news from New Mexico, where the Senate has barred conversion therapy for minors. Not sure what the House will do with that, or the governor.
Yep.
And in South Carolina, a federal court has ruled that the state must list both same-sex parents on birth certificates. That's South Carolina. That's good.
You got any more state stuff?
Yes. In Tennessee, two representatives have introduced some horrible anti-trans bathroom bills and no recognition of same-sex marriage. They got booed out of a press conference.
They did.
That was very sweet to see.
Well, let's see who wins.
There's talk of Laura Ingraham running for the Senate in Virginia.
Well, I mean, the encouraging news, and I heard it on the Rachel Maddow show, and it's great to hear, is that people are people aren't just rising up, but they're willing to run for office to oppose these people and replace them. And the Democratic recruiters are saying it used to be very hard to find candidates, and now even in these districts,
they're flooded with them.
We're flooded with them. And folks, this can be turned around. There are a lot of districts that Hillary won that are represented by Republican state legislators. Those districts can be turned around.
Michael Moore has a list of 10 things you can do to fight the Trump administration, and one of them is running for office. It's a good little list. You could Google that and find it.
I'd vote for you.
No, please. In Kentucky, they killed 2 anti-trans bills. That's good news. In Florida, a court ruled that a bakery can refuse to make a cake with a homophobic message.
Was this Florida, Washington? You're talking about Washington? Oh,
Florida.
Well, the cake issue.
The cake in Florida, the bakery, the Good Bakery, can refuse a hateful message on a cake because that is about expression.
Yeah, you know, we're going to get into free speech issues when we talk about Milo and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, our position basically is you can't be compelled to write a message that you disagree with, just like a printer doesn't have to print a particular book. But if you're just selling cakes, you got to sell them to gay couples as well as straight couples.
Yes, and the right wing argues that the mere selling of the cake is expression that violates their...
Because then I will somehow be participating in this evil ceremony.
Yeah, well,
which is a lot of nonsense when you come right down to it.
I'd like to see the questionnaire they give out to all their customers about: are you divorced? Have you committed adultery?
No. I just hate gay people.
Very simple.
And then
but it's a little confusing because the Florida court ruled that this bakery, or the argument over expression, made it not a public accommodation. I guess it's about the expressive message.
Right.
And yes, the Washington decision, the Supreme Court of Washington unanimously ruled against a homophobic florist.
Sorry about that, Arlene's Flowers. But
because the flowers are not inherently expressive.
Exactly.
Some would argue with that.
Oh, well, I mean, like when they come in,
Forget-me-nots. Give me a break.
All
right. The Southern Poverty Law Center has added the Alliance Defending Freedom to its lists of hate groups.
Yeah, well.
I have to agree with that. And WNBA star Candace Wiggins has quit the NBA, she says, a couple of years early, because she was very uncomfortable as a straight woman in the WNBA, and she was harassed and bullied.
That.
She said 98% of the WNBA is lesbian. And Sue Wicks, who is
98%.
98%. We regard that as an exaggeration.
Well, you know, when women started coming out on the women's golf tour,
one or two.
One of them we know, Muffin Spencer Devlin, said, what I really found out was that there were a lot fewer lesbians than I thought there were.
All right. And the Williams Institute says, speaking of proportions, that LGBT people are disproportionately incarcerated in this country, especially women. The numbers for women are much higher than for men. And they get regularly sexually abused and mistreated in prisons. It's sort of an untold story.
Now, we've told you since the last century that suicide is the second leading cause of death in young people between the ages of 15 and 24, and for LGBT kids, it's a higher rate. But this new study in JAMA says that these laws that have allowed same-sex marriage around the country have reduced the suicide attempts among LGBT youth by 7%. That's, you know.
Alpha Chi Omega sorority is welcoming trans women. I don't think we have time to show that tape this week, so we'll save that for next week. A trans woman in Toledo, Ohio, JoJo Stryker, was murdered in the last couple of weeks. The numbers are piling up again this week. And I think we should mention Milo. Did you see him on Bill Maher?
I did, and that's the first time I've ever seen him, and I thought he was pathetic.
Well,
not funny.
He clearly was, you know, his whole thing. He's only 32 years old, you know. This is
32. Our blessed Lord was 33 when he died, and he saved the world.
Again. There he goes again.
I'm an atheist, but you know,
yeah,
Jesus had some good things to say.
Yeah. So Milo Yiannopoulos went on Bill Maher, and this really was his undoing, because then people really paid attention to him. A lot of people got to look at him, and then people started, you know, reacting to him more. But I thought he tried to tone down his game at the beginning in the one-on-one interview, but he did this whole thing of wearing pearls and being sort of seductive with Bill Maher.
Maher was disgusting on the show.
Egregiously
called him a fag.
Yeah.
You know, thinks that's funny. Agreed with him about keeping transgender people out of bathrooms.
And about how he had been abused at college campuses.
And it was wonderful the way Larry Wilmore told him to F himself, and I think Larry should be able to take the show over now from Bill Maher.
And Malcolm
Get someone
Nance.
Reasonable.
Malcolm Nance said
Terrific.
the same thing. Yeah.
Malcolm Nance is the guy from the CIA.
Yeah. So then Milo got invited to CPAC because Matt Schlapp,
who love his bigotry.
Yeah.
They love his bigotry.
Well, they want him to talk about the abuse of free speech on college campuses. You know, he was not canceled at Berkeley because of free speech stuff, people showed up to protest, but then the violent people came and really turned it into violence, and he was canceled for safety issues, not because of free speech issues, but the right wing has turned all this around. But my underlying question to all this is, how come, and so then he gets exposed with these videos that have been online about him being interviewed about sex between older men and
he says when he was 14,
men.
a priest, had sex with him and taught him a lot about sex, and that was great.
And people can
lots
have,
of gay men do this, and da-da-da-da-da. And
so
he was like
then
making
the
a
whole
big...
world goes, oh, horrors!
You can't talk about that.
Well, we can talk about it, and certainly there are debates about what, who is capable of consent and who isn't, and he said he was not talking about pedophilia, and I kind of bought that.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
Pedophilia is with, and he said it's with prepubescent children.
But how come this is what turned the world around, not his disgusting racism, misogyny, anti-Semitism?
Having sex with underage people in this society, and again,
is worse than what he did with
We have laws about it, but as our friend Bill Dobbs reminds us, this is, if you commit this crime, or this is the thing that will get you punished for the rest of your life. Everybody needs to understand this. I think we should teach young people about this. If you transgress this line, you will be put on a sex offender registry for the rest of your life and have trouble getting work, great trouble getting work, finding a place to live, etc. Now, look,
there are people
child rape or whatever, and it is considered all what's the word? Statutory rape. If you have sex with someone underage, is of course very wrong. And people who do prey on children should be punished severely. But the question is where it is in proportion to everything else, like murder and all these other things.
Well, look, there are young men in prison who had sex with a girl a year younger who just happened to be on the other side of the age of consent laws.
Right. Well, there are Romeo and Juliet laws to protect people in near age and things like that, but it's a very
not
tough,
everywhere.
Very tough subject.
All right, shall we move on to international news?
Yes. Well, we've already talked about Randy Berry, and how about that Danny Watts? He's a race car driver. Got a picture of him, and he said, "Look, he came out. The Secret had been eating him up."
After he retired. He's 36. He retired from race. He's British. He's retired from race car driving, and said how tortured he was about coming out.
But now he hopes that young drivers will be able to come out.
Well, that's what they all say, and I say it's 2017, and you're,
and young people are
well-known, successful guy. Also in England, the Church of England wrote a report on homosexuality. And the retired bishops objected to this report because they said, you didn't talk to any gay people, or you didn't take them into consideration, and you've written this report that condemns same-sex marriage, and you're not going to allow it. Well, that was a brouhaha, and the House of Clergy rejected the report, which is a big deal.
Yeah. So, now, Tanzania is threatening to publish the names of suspected homosexuals. This is something from the deputy health minister, who says it's very un-African. Homosexuality, it's not biological, it's unnatural. Goes on and on and on and on and on. Have you ever come across a gay goat or a gay bird? Yes, we have.
Yes. Send that guy the book on homosexuality and nature.
Google it.
Well, they also closed a lot of AIDS clinics for promoting homosexuality.
Look, usually it's when governments are in trouble, they decide to go after us, just like Trump has.
Yeah. In Peru, there's a marriage bill that's been introduced in the legislature. And in Australia, they may be breaking through on marriage. A cross-party coalition is drafting a marriage bill. And in the drafting of that, they have rejected requests for, extra large religious exemptions. So that is looking good in Australia.
But in Israel, the ministers there voted down gay rights bills on the eve of LGBT Rights Day in the Knesset.
Well, it was mostly Orthodox members of the Knesset.
It was a Likud member who objected to this, but they are totally in the thrall of the Orthodox Jewish parties, and they can't get anything done for us.
In Finland, the right wing has been urging a public referendum to consider repeal of the marriage law there, the same-sex marriage law, but Parliament has rejected that request, and same-sex marriage is safe in Finland. And, you know, they're working up to a big presidential election in France, and the centrist presidential candidate, who is sort of expected to take it, is in trouble now because he sympathizes with the opponents of same-sex marriage. Although he supports marriage. Crazy. In New Zealand, they have promised to work to wipe out the old convictions of gay men for consensual sex.
As they've done in Britain.
They changed the law in 1986, which is before the United States, of course, had the Lawrence v. Texas decision. They think there are about 1,000 men who were convicted. The government has apologized. That's all good.
1986 is when we had the Hardwick decision.
Yeah, exactly.
Which said it's okay to ban. It's okay to ban sodomy. It's a states' rights issue.
Exactly. In Albania, the pro-LGBT organization will file suit for recognition of same-sex partnerships. The executive director there, Christy Pindari, is leading that fight in Albania. That's
Thank you,
great.
Christy.
In Mexico, in Baja California, they are issuing birth certificates with the names of both moms of a child.
Oh, this will be great for all the people being deported to Mexico across the border by the Trump administration. Deporting everybody from if you came in through Mexico, no matter where you're from.
In Japan, a trans man there is challenging the law that requires trans surgery to change your gender officially. And new rules are being proposed that include LGBT bashing at government agencies as sexual harassment.
Okay.
AIDS news.
Well, here's the big news. After forever, we've said there are 50,000 new infections in the United States every year. Well, they fell actually from 45,700 to 37,600 during the most recent 6-year period.
2008 to 2014, an 18% drop.
This is huge. However, there are still problems in that Latino men who have sex with men and MSMs, men who have sex with men 25 to 34-year-olds, have been contracting HIV at increased rates, and partly because of the fact that you can take PrEP now, drugs, people are getting other sexually transmitted infections. Those are on the rise, syphilis, gonorrhea, etc.
There has been an ongoing debate about PrEP, pre-exposure prophylaxis, taking a pill, Truvada, several times a week or every day to prevent HIV infection.
It works.
It does
almost
work.
100%.
Well, 2 cases of infection turned up in the last couple of years. Infected with strains of the virus that were resistant to that drug.
Yes.
Rare. Just 2 cases among however many tens of thousands of people are taking the drug.
But it's a good reason for using condoms as well as taking PrEP, but people are not.
And here's the third case. A Dutch man, 50 years old, has acquired HIV, though he was taking Truvada perfectly. They do periodic blood tests. They found it, on an ongoing basis. But he had thousands of sex partners, often used no condoms. He had rectal gonorrhea and chlamydia. He used crystal meth, cocaine,
he was
GHB,
busy.
methadone. I never heard of that. He tested, and ketamine, he tested negative for 6 months on Truvada, so it wasn't acquired before he started taking it. And it's not a Truvada-resistant HIV strain, as in the 2 other cases. He's now on therapy. His virus is undetectable. They think maybe the virus entered rectally and sort of sat around for a while and eventually got into his bloodstream because of the
before he started taking the drug.
No, not necessarily. But the point is that while it is extremely rare, it is possible to be infected.
And the condoms would protect you from all the other STIs.
Absolutely.
And of course, as we've reported on the show, there are drug-resistant strains of gonorrhea.
And for those who think your life ends with HIV, Magic Johnson has just been named president of basketball operations for the LA Lakers. This is a big coup, and he's going to be in charge.
And California has introduced universal health care legislation, which I hope passes there. The states are going to have to start doing this as the federal government, dries up our health care access.
In Seattle, Washington, Kings County, they think that 90% of those who are HIV positive know their status, 90% of them are on treatment, and 90% of those are undetectable. And this is being announced as a real step forward in ending the epidemic there and hopefully everywhere eventually. New York City is expanding HIV prevention and treatment work in its STD health clinics, but the New York State Governor, Cuomo, wants to cut health spending, including for HIV.
Damn him.
Yeah. Entertainment news?
Yeah.
You want to do a few quick reviews before we bring in our guests?
I've had so many play reviews. Go online to our Facebook page or get our email by signing up at gayusatv.org, and you can read my complete reviews. Sunset Boulevard, I finally saw with Glenn Close. High Camp. I saw two.
Is that it?
Yes. I saw
You could expand a little on that.
No.
Okay.
I saw two
Well, let me put it this way. Good or bad?
It's the first time I saw it, and I'll stick with the movie. But how's that?
Yeah. That was my guess.
There were two dyspeptic plays that I saw that I thought worked in our time. One is Carol Churchill's Escaped Alone at BAM. I've not been high on her lately, but she's...
No, me neither.
This worked very well. It's only an hour out at BAM.
Look, anytime I can see four middle-aged women sitting around talking for an hour, I'm happy.
Well, it's laced with other stuff.
Okay.
Then I saw Wallace Shawn's Evening at Talkhouse. Now, I disliked it intensely when I saw it in London, and I liked it here because of what we're living through now.
What has happened to you?
The world has happened. And it stars Matthew Broderick there, as you see, and Wallace Shawn. Then I saw this play called Kid Victory, and I didn't know what it was about. It's
Before, during, or after?
No. It's the new John Kander musical. He has a new collaborator, Greg Pierce. Anyway, it's about an abducted teen, and it goes from sort of saccharine and tedious to then you have songs sung by the predator who was abducted this kid, and it gets very creepy and uncomfortable. But in the end, it's uplifting. And
speaking of creepy and uncomfortable, we have a guest approaching, but you have one more.
One more. If I Forgot is the name of the play. And there's Jeremy Shamos in the middle there. It's a family drama about dads having a lot of problems, and the adult children have to figure out what to do with them. And it's got some great stuff. But Stephen Levinson, cut this play by a half, and you've got a good show.
Oh, don't we say that about everything?
No, well, I don't think people understand this. Less is more, unless you've got Rob Shooter sitting here.
Yeah,
Thank you. Hello. How are you? Well,
Come on in.
Come in, squeeze in a little closer. Here you go.
Straight from the Wendy Williams show.
How you doing? How you doing? I love her.
How you doing?
How you doing? It's such a
I
party
love her
at her show.
sometimes. I don't love her always.
Yes.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me back.
Well, thanks for coming back. Do you want to start? Look,
Here's your Oscar ballot.
Thank you. My word, this is a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of categories. This is why the show's 7 hours.
Exactly, or 7 days.
Yes.
Well, we asked you to come in because it is the Oscars.
It's Oscars.
So that's
It's all about La La Land. It's gonna. I know. Did you see it? Of course you
Yes,
did.
I had
Hated it.
trouble getting through
Hated
it.
Awful.
It's really strange. I really wanted to enjoy it. I kept
sure.
willing myself to love a musical, and it wasn't that good.
No.
It's not good.
No.
But Hollywood loves this movie.
It's an old-fashioned story.
Yeah,
Do they still
they
love
do
it?
love it. It's going to win everything. It's
I
gonna win,
I
know.
was hoping it had peaked.
No, I think it's No, I think it's just grown and grown and grown, and they're trying to get the two leads to actually perform on the show, which I don't think is going to happen.
I
but,
admit that I watched it at home on my TV screen, which is really big, but it must be different in the theater.
Yeah, I mean, it is sort of like old Hollywood. It tries to be old Hollywood. I don't think it really succeeds in a way like a
No.
Chicago did, or one of those
No.
sort of great old-fashioned musicals, but this is the show. This is
Bad
the
music.
movie. Bad, well, yeah, it's not that great.
Not a
Wait a minute,
compelling
isn't
story.
Lin-Manuel Miranda going to win the EGOT when he wins for Best Song?
It's a really interesting category this year. You have Justin Timberlake, who everybody loves.
Yeah.
You have the two guys from Evan Hansen, the biggest hit on Broadway, who did the songs for La La Land.
Andy hated that.
You didn't like Evan Hansen?
It's the same playwright who did If I Forgot.
I
didn't hate it. I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it.
About
I
it this
didn't
today.
hate it. I just thought, you know,
You thought it was...
it was nothing. It was.
And of course, Lin-Manuel is up too. But I think Best Song's going to go to La La Land.
Well, you know what we really, really adored? I've been slobbering over it for 6 months, is Moonlight.
It's just a gem. I'd go as far to say it's almost a perfect movie.
It really
it's almost
is.
a perfect movie.
I've seen it twice now, and I will watch it again. It is poetry.
Yeah.
It is beautiful. It is
And it
genius.
sucks you in. It's almost like watching Shakespeare. It takes a couple of minutes to really get into it. But
Yes.
once you do, time flies by. I don't think
Yeah.
I breathed during the whole movie. I
And
just sat
should
there and...
win for Best Adapted Screenplay for
Should.
Carol Alvin McCraney.
Who is here?
Oh, really?
We had
Oh,
him
what's
on the
that?
show, yeah.
who wrote the original story, and Barry Jenkins, who wrote and directed the movie.
It's almost perfect. I think it's still playing in the cinemas, so if you haven't seen it, try.
We've been
Raving about it,
forcing
right.
people for months to go see it, but everybody loves it.
Do
It's
what you're
great.
told.
Do what you're told.
See? Moonlight. Forget watching the Oscars. Just
an-
see Moonlight.
And of course, we have Jimmy Kimmel hosting this year.
How's that going to be?
I think he's going to be charming. I think that job is a traffic cop. It's just about doing a great opening, and then they really disappear till the end.
Yes.
So they just come on then, and I think he's going to move it along.
Is he going to make a joke about tousling Trump's hair?
No, that was Jimmy Fallon.
Jimmy Fallon, yeah.
Jimmy Kimmel.
Wrong one.
Jimmy Kimmel is much edgier.
He is edgier, but I think, I fear that in Hollywood, I was out there a couple of weeks ago, and the sentiment towards Trump is dying down. It's not as exciting and as revolutionary, and Meryl Streep's speach has almost been forgotten. It feels like it
at the
happened.
BAFTA Awards, people
True.
were really political,
True.
and the British Film Academy just a couple of weeks ago,
Right.
they were hot on
I think
it.
the Brits are more fired up than the Americans at the moment. I was back home, and there's talk about Trump coming over to England, and
Yes.
the Brits don't want him, and they really don't want the Queen to have to meet this man.
Right.
It's not really
They
her
don't
choice.
want the Queen pimped out for him, is what they
But
said.
she sort of works for us. She doesn't like to think that.
Yeah.
But she sort of has to do kind of what she's
She
told
has to
you.
do what she's told.
Yes, I
Well,
fear.
she's like a little bobblehead that they.
Now, we're talking about Her Majesty.
Oh my God!
haven't
You're
watched
to the
The
tower,
Crown?
to the
Oh,
tower, to
my
the
After all
tower.
her service,
So I got an email.
this is the way you reduce her?
My mother wanted me to marry Prince Charles.
It would have been a lovely marriage. It could have ended up beautifully.
Princess Anne might have been interesting.
So I heard you talking before I came on. I got an email from Milo's people who were doing his
Please.
press conference to come in and help. I know.
To help?
To help, to sit down with him and
Oh
to sort
my
of
God.
go over some message points and help. I didn't do it, but I did enjoy the email exchange. And he's a whiny little devil. Yeah, he was more concerned about his hair and makeup being on
Oh,
time,
yeah.
and he had a cold, and he needed vitamin shots, and it was a weird exchange
Very.
of email.
He's
Very
getting into
interesting.
victimhood now, which is what he condemns the world for.
I know.
And all he has done is victimize people on the basis
Fat
of
people.
race.
And what I think is
and-
really interesting about this is that freedom of speech, or being politically correct, has allowed him to say whatever he wants. So now, let's change that around. Let's not be politically correct anymore and not let him say what he wants. Because there's some sort of... The argument that he has is that political correctness is disgusting.
Yes.
It's political correctness that allows that fool to get away with what he's got away with.
Well, you know,
We call it politeness,
Exactly.
not political
Yes,
correctness.
but it was interesting. The emails, he flew in from Miami or Fort Lauderdale, and he was whiny, and he had a cold, and he wanted to make sure his car was on time, and where's my hair, where's my makeup, where's my flute? All right, little whiny.
Well, the whole thing is such a put-up job, you know. It's
He's in
all
trouble
such
though
an
now.
act.
He's really in trouble.
Yeah.
Like he's lost the book deal. Simon
Right.
& Schuster, $250,000.
somebody will pick it up.
I think he'll
they
self-publish
say.
it.
Huh?
He's pretending he has interest in it.
Yeah.
I don't think he
what's
does.
think he
what
does.
is his appeal going to be beyond this
He
now that
should.
he's saddled with this?
Yeah, he should try to be a male Ann Coulter. There's money to be made in doing that. Anne's made a ton of money, but Anne plays within the bounds of normality. Like Anne knows the lines
smarter
across.
than he
She
is.
is. And Anne can get herself on Good Morning America and the Today Show.
Yes.
Anne can get on those. He can't get on those shows now.
Not like this. He can't.
They'll do
Well, his appearance on Mars was a disaster, really. I mean,
I heard you say it was the
wasn't
beginning
even
of the
funny.
end.
Yeah.
It was the beginning of the end.
Because it brought him to a bigger audience.
Yeah, because it was sort of like in the gutter, on the over there, and we didn't pay any attention. And when he went on Bill's show, I was furious. I didn't want Bill to book him, and I think one of the guest panelists dropped out.
Yes.
And I was thinking, gosh, if I was a panelist on that show that night, would I drop out? And I'd like to think yes, but I think Bill did us all a favour by having him on.
Not deliberately.
Yeah, well, that's the trouble. That's the trouble.
Yeah.
Bill's now taking credit for it. Bill's now saying that he's sold the world.
Yeah,
by
while he
now.
was sucking up to him.
But it's interesting, isn't it?
Well, I want to go back to what you started to talk about with Hollywood and Trump, though, and the fact that they want him to be normalized.
Yeah, they
is what I take
do.
from that.
And like when I was
Who are you referring
these
to,
are actors
though?
and agents, and this is really the inner circle of Hollywood.
They don't want to be political.
They don't like it. They don't have the tools to talk about this. This is
Well-
not something that their PR people have given them sound bites for. Or I was interviewing a lady from The View, and the interview got pulled because she didn't want to talk about any politics. And
Well,
it's
I was
strange.
reading about the
wasn't
golfer Jordan Spieth this week as saying, I'm not allowed to talk about anything political because the head of a company that he works for.
Ernie Els and Rory McIlroy played golf with Trump.
So did Tiger Woods.
And Tom Brady. But it is interesting. After Meryl's speech, I was so inspired, and I thought, like, we're going to have our picket forts and march the street. It's gone. Like in Hollywood now, people are back to their frappuccinos and their low-fat diets, and they're not talking Trump.
Well, because they care about their own success and money.
Yeah, and
that is their highest value.
Yeah, yes, that's right. And they're terribly short attention span. People in Hollywood move on very quickly. So last week feels like last year. So I fear already, until he does something awful to the arts.
And you
Well,
were
I
telling
can't
me
believe.
that
Wait a minute! I can't believe that Mahershala Ali from Moonlight,
he gave a beautiful
when
speech.
he wins supporting actor,
know.
which I hope he will,
Yeah.
from Moonlight, will not make a strong reference to this. Maybe not completely direct, but it'll be about refugees.
You're
and,
right.
and
But the ones
those
that we
kinds
want,
of things.
you know, that people in America are listening to are the Ryan Goslings and the Andrew Garfield. And I think you're right. I hope he makes a great speech. But wouldn't it be great if one of these mega stars got up there and said something like, "Where's Angelina when all this is going on?"
Viola Davis, I suppose, could do
She
something.
could, but she's awfully subtle.
Yeah.
Like she's almost too smart for the room. I think you need to stand there and scream at the top of your voice for 40 million people to watch, to understand
But how can
it.
you not start out with a bunch of Trump jokes?
They will,
Well,
but they won't.
they
But they
will.
won't be. They'll be about his hair. They'll be about his suntan.
Yeah.
There might be some about building the wall, which now is a punchline. I don't think people even think what that means when they hear that. He said it so often now; it's just become a term.
And the producers have said that they're not censoring political
They're not censoring
speeches. The train seems to be this year that you can say
You can say it,
things.
but behind the scenes, their publicists and their agents are saying, "Accept the damn award and smile and good off."
Well, that's what
they're not-
agents and publicists have
they're
always
frightened.
said.
Yeah, they're frightened of rocking the boat. It is interesting. We'll see what happens. I hope we're wrong.
Well, and I really did hate La La Land, and I really would love Moonlight to win everything. But my compromise dream, which I also think will not come true, is that at least Hidden Figures could sneak
That
in there.
was a wonderful movie.
I thought so. Conventional,
Yes.
but really
A great
terrific.
old-fashioned Sunday
Yeah.
afternoon. I sat there with a bucket of popcorn and ate it up, and the popcorn was delicious. Brad Pitt, though, is behind
Yes.
Moonlight, so I think I don't know if he's been working the phones, but he's certainly been pushing this movie. Having Brad there helps.
And it's between Casey Affleck and Denzel Washington for Best Actor. And I finally, I'm a SAG-AFTRA voter, and I did vote for Denzel for that. But I finally saw Manchester by the Sea and felt that it was a very affecting thing. I heard it's a guy thing.
I stopped watching halfway through. I walked out on the movie in my bedroom.
Interesting about that part, it was originally Matt Damon.
Oh, wait,
Matt's
it was
role.
at my neighbor's house.
Matt was going to play
It was Matt's role, so Matt is the producer of that movie. Matt's pushing that movie. So they offered the role to Matt, and The Martian was overshooting, or it was running late, and so he had to pass on it. And it was Matt who gave the role Casey, and now Casey might get
performance.
I know, he might get an Academy
Speaking
Award.
of Martians, I hated Arrival, too.
What did you like?
Moonlight and Hidden Figures. And the OJ documentary, I really hope that,
was
wins
fantastic.
the... Yeah,
that was fantastic. What other categories do we love?
Now,
we can move on to other things.
Where are we?
Caitlyn Jenner.
Caitlyn Jenner, massive trouble. So she's got a $4 million book advance, and the publishers are really nervous now about this book. The perception is, and I think somewhat the reality...
4 million?
4 million. 4 million. I think she's given it away on the Kardashian show for free, and her own reality show, which got cancelled. Which got cancelled, and so now they've got this $4 million advance. I don't know if it's going to sell that many books. That's a lot of books.
It is.
It's a lot of books.
And, you know, people, Jeff Sessions has taken back the trans guidelines. People think trans people are icky.
Right.
And so I don't see them
And she
much
hasn't
about it.
helped. Like, she was there at the inauguration.
Yes.
She was down there supporting Trump.
Maybe Breitbart will push the book.
Oh, good grief. What world are we living in?
Well, that's a question. But did you say that the Kardashians may be adding a...
Yes, this is the big gossip of the next season. There's talking about internally a gay character, a major gay character being on the Kardashians show.
somebody has to come out.
Well, that's one, or maybe somebody will come and join. Kim has friends join. Maybe one of the girls might come out.
I think Kanye should come out.
I have never watched the Kardashians.
I love that show. I love that show. I love that show.
I watched The Real Housewives.
I love that show too.
Yes.
That Bethany hates me. She was on the
I
radio
love
yesterday.
Bethany.
She was so mean to me. She called me a cheap man's Perez on the radio. I called her a cheap Kardashian.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think
No,
about...
I think you should say to Bethany, but Bethany, we love you. Why would you
She's
do
a tough.
that?
I knew Bethany before she was famous.
Are you up on the Grace Slick Chick-fil-A controversy?
Fire away.
All right,
I don't like their chicken. Do you like their chicken?
No,
Never tried
Well,
it.
we haven't tried it because, you know, we are who we are. But I actually hear the
They
sandwiches
used
are
to
good.
sponsor the LPGA Women's Golf Tour.
They did?
Yes. They were big sponsors
did?
of
Very
the LPGA.
anti-LGBT
Yes.
owners, so the management has pulled back a little bit. But Grace Slick allowed the Starship tune, Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now, to be used on a Chick-fil-A ad that was on the Super Bowl. And so she was attacked for this, so she said, look, I'm opposed to everything they stand for, and I'm donating all the proceeds to Lambda Legal Defense and Education Fund.
Net or gross?
You know, that's a lot of... I'm married to a songwriter, and I wish one of his songs were playing on a Super Bowl commercial. That is a lot.
Very
I'd be in a
successful.
better apartment in London Terrace if that happened, let me tell you.
Yes.
That's a great
We
thing to
all
get.
live in the same
Terrace.
building. We've talked about that before. Oh, I do give thanks for Deadpool not getting any nominations.
that movie.
I hated it.
I think he's utterly charming.
Well, I'm
I
happy
think
to
it's
say he's charming, but
And
I
naughty
really...
and silly and funny. No.
maybe I saw it on the wrong day. It did not appeal to me. Oh, and The Apprentice. You have a
Yeah,
whole
oh my
thing on
goodness. So The Apprentice didn't do very well post-Trump. With Arnold, it really didn't do very well at all. And I'm told, I have to say allegedly here to be careful, I know somebody that was on the show, a celebrity this year. When she checked into the hotel, they knew when she was leaving. Which implies, because you're meant to check in for 6 weeks, so she checked in.
Script?
It implies that they, and sure enough, allegedly, be careful, ABC, and sure enough, the day she got fired was the day that she was to check out of the hotel.
Well,
She told me.
I do give Arnold credit for the greatest line of the year when he was attacked by Trump over his ratings.
Yes.
And he looks in the camera and he puts this out right away and he says, why don't we change jobs? You can have your ratings back and I can be president and let Americans sleep at night.
Wouldn't it be
It was
lovely?
so wonderful.
But the gossip on the show is that didn't do very well in the ratings. They are going to do another season. I think Arnold's going to stay with it. But this time they're going to split the teams up into famous Democrats and famous Republicans. I'm not joking. They're really.
Who will do
Chris
it?
Christie, all the people that do Dancing with
Bernie
the Stars.
Sanders.
They'll do the Dancing with the Stars people. Rick Perry. They get paid $150,000 to be on that show. It's 6 weeks' work.
He has
unless
a
you get
job
kicked.
now.
Oh, that's right. He has a job.
Yeah.
Ben has a job too. But Chris Christie's still looking. I would watch Chris Christie on The Apprentice with
Sarah
Sarah Palin.
Palin.
And then we have some Democrats on there.
Yeah.
What, isn't Sarah Palin going to be ambassador to Canada?
That's the rumor.
Eventually.
Oh, God.
And Andy Cohen.
Yeah, so Andy Cohen is sort of like the king of late. I love his show. I think
Yeah.
it's hilarious. Don Lemon at CNN, who I think is great too. Don, really? I think he's adorable.
He's a little snarky. I don't watch him very
Right.
often.
He now is in talks with CNN to get his own late night show and have a talk show on CNN, a very casual, laid-back format, very similar to Andy. He'll probably go up against Andy in the ratings.
Gay versus
and
gay.
versus gay. We'll have two gay guys out there in New York City doing talk shows. But yeah, Don's pitching it right now.
Well, Don was just attacked directly by Trump.
Yeah, I think he's in on the joke. I know him a little bit, and he's a good man. He's a good guy, but I think he's a little on the joke. And I think, too, he likes us talking about him. So sometimes I wonder, I think he does it on purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
And he's not a dummy. He's not a dummy.
Okay. Now,
That's good to hear.
There. And what should we all go and see? Moonlight.
exactly.
It's really good. It really is good.
Now, we have the new ABC series, When We Rise,
Yes.
starting next week. And
Star-studded.
Gilbert Baker, who was the artist who created the rainbow flag.
Well, tell people what the show is
40
first.
years ago. It's an 8-hour series history of the LGBT movement.
In San Francisco.
Yeah, mostly West Coast. Gilbert is one of the characters in the series. He called me this morning. He said he's seen the whole 8 hours. He thinks the portrayal of him is okay.
Right.
And
It must be strange seeing somebody play you on TV.
well, and some of us would not watch that, but Gilbert did.
All 8 hours. Twice.
And he said he gives the series a B.
Pretty high praise.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty high praise.
Got a mixed review and variety.
Yeah, I mean, some people criticize it for cutting out some of the grittiness. I think it looks a little bit glamorized, but
It's ABC.
It's written
it's
by
ABC.
Dustin Lance Black and produced by Gus Van Sant, who's the executive producer. But who's in it? Guy Pearce, Mary Louise Parker, Rachel Griffiths, Michael Kenneth Williams, Austin McKenzie, Emily. It's got a huge star.
Major
I mean,
people.
Whoopi. All these people are in it. Everybody's in it.
Yeah,
Everybody's got a cameo.
I think this is the new thing. After the success of the OJ versus the People, networks now are looking for these shows that run for 10 weeks or 8 weeks.
Yes.
I think that they've figured out they can really build an audience and lock them in for 8 or 10 weeks. So I think we'll see more of this.
They say the first half, when the characters are younger, works better than when they're older. But that's just the reviews.
That might just
See
be
for
life.
yourself. ABC TV starting on Monday. At 9 p.m.
I think
Eastern
they're
time.
showing it in 2-hour chunks.
2-hour chunks, I think, for 4 weeks. Is it 8 hours?
8 episodes.
Oh.
Yeah, but 2 hours at a time.
I
Got
see.
it. That's a lot of TV.
Yes. And Gilbert said actually the person who ends up being most of the focus is the female character, so that'll be interesting. But I sort of feel it'll be too homogenized.
I mean, I would love it if it was on HBO or Showtime and we could go all out.
Yes.
But on ABC, it's probably going to be a little bit sterile, a little bit more glamorous. But a lot of people are going to see it, and it might do us a lot of good.
And we're all
they did American.
jaded and...
Well,
Well, they did
Can we
American.
prove that
I
we're
love
jaded?
the Kardashians.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, enough of this week.
We're out of time.
Yes. Thank you for coming.
Goes so fast. Thanks for being with us.
He's supposed to say that,
It's
not
my
you.
favorite show. I love watching you
thank
two.
you.
Rob Shooter, naughtygossip.com.
Oscars this Sunday. Thank you for watching. We'll be back next week, and I am getting a haircut. Thank God. Tomorrow. I'll be a whole new person. All right. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you both.
And we'll see you next week.